back to Melbourne 22.
Earlier this week, we popped out to speak with Telmo Languagere, who is a Labor candidate contesting the seat of Tarneet. We also spoke with Susan Seary, Liberal candidate for the seat of Narre Warren South.
Well,
Damien?
Let's take a look.
Let's do it.
I've lived in Narre Warren South electorate my whole life. And then in 2012, I actually ran for the city of Casey for the local elections, and I actually topped the polls, and it was a fantastic result.
I don't live in the West, but I have worked and work strenuously in the West. I represent the people of the West. I lived in the West in the past.
I haven't run for the seat of Narre Warren South before.
I've not, because that electorate did not exist in the past.
If I was elected, if I was honoured to be elected, I would stay for the full term and possibly continue further on and make it a career.
I might not call it a political career per se. I have been an activist of especially human rights since the age of 13. At 13, back in Uruguay, I joined the trade union movement, the student movement. I've experienced exile or been an asylum seeker in Argentina, the reason why I had to leave my country.
But I think that, in my opinion, that's why I'm part of the Liberal Party, is that the Nathai government actually has provided ways of people to save money through better rail, but also the extension of Zone 1 when you're actually travelling on public transport, because public transport is a very big issue and lots of people use public transport out in Narre Warren South. So the extension of Zone 1 will actually benefit everybody in the city of Casey and Narre Warren South, because if you're travelling in 1 and 2, you only pay for Zone 1.
Yes, I do. I believe that the Australian Labor Party best represents the interests of working men and working women. I believe that the Australian Labor Party best represents the interests of people like me, of cultural, linguistic, diverse type of backgrounds.
All campaigns are different depending on the electorate. So my campaign is actually more on a grassroots level. So I will be doing more door knocking, having listening posts, going to shopping strips, so on and so forth, because my budget isn't that big.
Personally, the Australian Labor Party institutionally does not provide funds to run my campaign, and in fact to run the campaign of most elected members of Parliament. It is incumbent on the member to do all the fundraising. So,
I do serve all the voters equally. My parents are actually from South America, so I actually understand what a lot of the residents are going through. As a first generation Australian, it's really important for me to treat them even probably with a little bit more attention, and I do intend to serve all the voters as much as I can.
I serve everybody the same. It would not cross my mind to even think about representing the interests of anyone, irrespective of their political views, their gender, their sexual preferences, their disability, their age, or any of those other attributes that an individual or a human being might have.
Yes, I will be out in the community every day. I actually live in the electorate, so if I was honoured to be elected, it's very important for me to communicate with my constituents if I was honoured, and try to help them as much as I can.
I must say that one becomes elected by an electorate, but the moment that one holds a portfolio, as I now do and as I did in the past during the Brumby government, you actually belong to Victoria in the case of members of Parliament of Victorian background.
That was interesting. It's always nice to hear from those people who are down there in the political trenches.
In the
grassroots,
grassroots, Damien. So we have a very special guest in the studio today. We are going to be speaking with Sandal, who is representing the Greens for the seat of Melbourne in the upcoming election. Hi, Ellen. Thanks so much for coming in.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So, Ellen, the seat of Melbourne, very highly contested seat, but being for the seat of Melbourne, are you a Melbourneite?
I am. I live in Kensington, which is on the really west end of the electorate, so it goes all the way from Kensington through to East Melbourne.
Okay, excellent. And so for your electorate, what do you think the key issues are?
definitely transport is the number one. So public transport and the east-west toll road. So the Nat Fund government wants to build an $18 billion toll road right through the inner suburbs of Melbourne. It's bad for people's homes. People will lose their homes, will lose a lot of parkland, it'll put more cars on the road, but most importantly, it'll mean we don't have any money to put into public transport. And people in Melbourne want better public transport. We've had decades of underinvestment in it, so people are saying to me all the time, can't we just invest more in public transport? That's something I'll be running really strongly on. But people also want to see a fair society, so better health and education. We have a large number of residents who live in public housing, a large number of renters. I want to see a fair go for all of those people.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of your political influences, any organisations as you were growing up that really helped shape sort of the way you think today?
Well, I'm not a career politician like a lot of other people in the old parties. I started off working in the community sector. I started off as a scientist, actually. My first career was as a scientist, and I worked at the CSIRO. But I realised that if you want to make change on some of those really, really big issues like climate change, that policy was the area where I felt I could make the most difference. And so for 5 years, I ran a national not-for-profit, a climate change advocacy organisation. So that's what I've been doing for the last few years. I haven't been in politics, I've been in the advocacy space on climate change. And a lot of those environmental NGOs, climate change NGOs is where kind of my passion lay. But I realised that a lot of our politicians didn't feel as strongly about things like climate change and the environment and a fair society like I did. And so it was about time we got some people into Parliament who did really care.
Right, so a few years ago you also were prestiged enough to win an award in the environmental sector. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I won 2 awards in 2009, which I was really honoured. One of them was a Melbourne Award for contribution to sustainability in the city of Melbourne, and one of them was the Banksia Award, which I won joint with some of my colleagues at the Australian Youth Climate Coalition. And it's a national award that recognises people who work to make our environment a better place. So, I mean, I was honoured, but really it's in recognition of the thousands and thousands of young people who were working really hard to get action on climate change, both here in Victoria, but also across the whole country.
Yeah, and one last question for you, Ellen. If you get elected, what would be sort of your first point of call, first thing you'd like to change?
Well, our first priority would be making sure that the East-West Toll Road isn't built. So at the moment, Labor's saying if the contracts are signed before the election, they'll go ahead and build it, and it was their idea in the first place. So really there's very little difference between Labor and Liberals on that. And the seat of Melbourne's really, really close, and if we do win, because Parliament's so close as well, we could have balance of power, and I would use that power to say to the Liberal and Labor Party, whoever's in government, that we can't build the toll road, we need to invest in public transport instead.
Great. Well, thanks for your time here today, Ellen. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Ellen, and we'll stay tuned as to the outcome of the seat of Melbourne.
Yeah,
Thanks.
definitely. Now let's take a look at some of Melbourne's new beautiful waterways.
Maybe I'll see you tonight. Maybe I'll see you tonight. Wherever the night takes you, maybe you'll see me too. The colder it gets, you won't see me anymore. But there's still a chance I might walk to your door. Maybe the timing's not right. I won't be seeing you tonight. Maybe I'll see you tonight. Maybe I'll see you tonight.
Melbourne really is a beautiful city. Well, we've got another break for you now, but we're going to be right back.